Well, hello again everyone and welcome back to the Naton State. I'm Charles Naton, once more shining a bright light into the dusty broom cupboards of democracy to see what scurries out. Now, as I'm recording this video, the entire world's media is poring over every word and every line of Donald Trump's speech in Davos. What is not so well known is that another very senior American was in fact giving a speech to Parliament yesterday. I'm referring to Speaker of the House of US Representatives, Mike Johnson. Now, he's the first speaker to ever address Parliament from the giddy heights of Committee Room 14. Obviously, he's not going to be in the chamber as he's not an elected MP. However, it's still a very important occasion, and despite his rather soft and friendly spoken manner, he did have some very interesting things to say. Now, the session kicked off with our own speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, making the usual warm remarks about shared history and so forth. Now, there's nothing particularly unusual in any of that, but he did make one interesting comment about bells, which, given that the 250th anniversary of the US Declaration of Independence is fast approaching, was really quite interesting to a history nerd like me. And I'm not sure who knows this, but I didn't. It's interesting.
Let us go back 50 years. Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II made a historic visit to Philadelphia to mark the bicentenary of America's independence. That visit, described by Her Majesty as a joyous celebration of British-American friendship. In 1976, the late Queen brought with her the bicentennial bell, a gift from the people of Britain to the people of the United States, inscribed, "Let freedom ring." This celebrated the common cause of freedom, uniting our two countries, and was cast in the Whitechapel Bell Foundry in London, the same foundry that created the original Liberty Bell and our own Big Ben.
So there's a little quick history lesson from our own speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. It's nice to see something other than pornography and angry ranting going on the internet. Next up was, of course, Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, despite his quiet and sort of collegiate manner, we should be under no illusions as to what he's saying when he's talking about ushering in a new age. He is, of course, signalling what a lot of observers and academics have noticed for quite a while. The old order of managerialism is coming to an end, and a new age of civilizationism is rising. Make no mistake, these are fundamental changes, and they underpin all of the huge changes that have been going on in the last 10 to 15 years. If anyone's getting the feeling that anything's falling apart and society's not quite as it used to be, it's because there's these huge underlying currents shifting everything around. In 10 years' time, the world and the societies in it will seem quite different to how they are now. Some people think it will be the end of civilization, others believe it will be the beginning. I guess time will tell. But here's Mike Johnson rather understating the case here.
Across the pond, Congress and the Trump administration have been working very hard. We're trying to usher in a new golden age for our country, as we say. We're marshaling every resource we have to make America safer and stronger and more prosperous than ever before. And I'm very bullish on the prospects of doing that. We must do this because we know those hostile to the West, to our shared values, are engaging in increasingly sophisticated forms of subversion and espionage. We see China, Russia, and Iran grow more aggressive and emboldened as they intensify their efforts to exert economic, political, and military influence around the world. We see a callous disregard for basic human rights, new provocations, and even the theft of intellectual property on a scale like we have never seen before. Clearly, President Trump is taking seriously the modern and dynamic threats that China and Russia pose to our global security, especially in focus the last few days as it relates to the Arctic. And while we can have thoughtful debate among our friends about how best to counter these threats, we all certainly agree they must be countered. We ignore these threats at our peril. And I want to hasten to express our gratitude to the UK and to all of you for joining us in some of our most recent actions to deter these hostile regimes, including the recent seizure of black market vessel seeking to circumvent oil sanctions. That was a big help to us. That kind of open dialogue and partnership is a great example of how we can work together to ensure our collective defense around the world. It is an objective and obvious truth that a strong America is good for the entire world, and a strong UK is as well. At the same time, it's also obvious that we have to take care of our own houses, so to speak, before we take care of the neighborhood. And let's be honest, among friends here, in both of our nations, there is a need today to fortify our houses against internal challenges as well. In the West, if we make an honest assessment, we must acknowledge that our long-term prosperity and security are currently being undermined by, let's call it a crisis of self-doubt. It's been developing now for years. Elite institutions today tell the young and impressionable that our story is one of oppression and hypocrisy and failure. Our brightest minds are too often taught to view our history only through the lens of its sins. And we see the work of international organizations and transnational bodies hinder the very spirit of creativity and industriousness and daring that our nations were built upon. We have faced this in America just as you have here, a truly menacing skepticism towards history and our national institutions. And it's even come to the point where even great heroes like Sir Winston Churchill are questioned for their legacy. What has taken hold is a mindset that defines itself not by what it loves and seeks to preserve, but instead by what it condemns and seeks to tear down. And this growing disaffection we see, particularly among our younger citizens, is a serious threat to the health of both our nations. If the next generation is never exposed to the deeper wisdom of the Western world, or the enduring tradition of the British Parliament, or the genius of America's model of Republican self-government, then why would they feel any obligation to defend or preserve them?
When Speaker Johnson refers to a crisis of confidence here in the West, we all really know what he's talking about. Our institutions don't seem to believe in themselves or even the society which they're supposed to manage and govern on our behalf. This shouldn't be surprising, as this is the end result of decades of academia and state-sponsored education taking every opportunity to criticise Western culture and America specifically, regardless of what the objective facts actually are. Now, the West is indeed very strong when it comes to trying to recognise its own errors and mistakes of the past. Where this strays into obvious agenda-driven dishonesty is when there are no redeeming features mentioned with Western society. In fact, if you take history as a long view, you'll find that the individualism of Western societies is in fact quite rare and is pretty much the exception to the rule. History is mostly a story of autocratic collectivism where the idea of individual rights are virtually unknown. There's not much else to say about that, as Speaker Johnson's done a good job of summing it up. However, he does say one last very important thing which kind of hits home for the whole reason for this channel.
The simple truth is that freedom cannot survive if we outsource our responsibility as citizens. This is a fact that remains true at a national level. We cannot fail in our responsibility to protect our people and their security. Amongst our allies, we see the UK and Europe stepping up as faithful partners here, and I want to declare that today. Whether it's NATO's nation's historic commitment to raise their investment in defense, which we applaud, or the AUKUS alliance deepening its cooperation in submarines and undersea defense, our partnership is proving that nations can prioritize their individual interests responsibly and at the same time make strides towards strengthening alliances and preserving the freedom and sovereignty of our nation states.
Freedom cannot survive if we outsource our responsibilities as citizens. That single line encapsulates everything that's been happening in Western societies for the past 20 years or so. Because collectively, that's exactly what we have done. We've outsourced our citizens' responsibilities to so-called technocratic elites who we foolishly thought would be willing and able to govern for the collective good. Well, if the collective good is to further the interests of the lanyard class, then I suppose that's what they've done. Of course, we now realise this, which is why we see all these seismic civilisational changes going on around us. And now that process is unstoppable. We are moving back far more towards a civilisational more than a managerial model of society. And that very much includes national and civilisational culture, which is reasserting itself for the betterment of all. So we can see a lot more of this sort of thing going on in the future, and it doesn't matter how much the technocratic elites scream about it, you can't stop the tectonic plates from shifting now. It's far too late. So that's everything from the Naton State this time around, and I'll be back very soon with another look at the committee rooms. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.